Hello, everyone. This is Randall Paul, and we're in Cairo, Egypt, at the Windsor Hotel, having a dialogue today between Mohamed Abdelaziz and Yehuda Stolov. These gentlemen have agreed to talk with us about some of the deepest and most important aspects of their beliefs and their history together and apart. And it's July 22nd or 21st today, do you know?
23rd.
23rd, thank you. It's July 23rd.
No, 22nd. So
22nd? Okay, 22nd. At about 3:40 in the afternoon. And I've asked these gentlemen to share with us and each other the story of how they came to believe their most fundamental beliefs. You'll be hearing in the background, by the way, the horns of the taxis and the cars in downtown Cairo. But over that, we'll be hearing their wonderful voices and stories. So, gentlemen, either one of you want to start talking? Tell us the story of how you came to what you currently believe.
Mohammed wants me to start, so I will start. For me, it happened around the age of 13, 14. It was a gradual process, but already when I was 6, my mother and father sent me to a religious school. They were not religious, and most of my class were not coming from religious homes. We were some kind of traditional, but there was a common understanding that in the religious system you get better education, you respect your parents more, you become more polite or whatever. So they sent me to a religious school, and for 6.5 years it didn't matter much. We more or less continued our lives as they were before. But then I think it was around, it started around the age of my bar mitzvah. Maybe it started a bit before, because my father passed away when I was 10 years old. And then for 1 year I needed to go to the synagogue 3 times a day to say the special mourner's prayer. So already there was this connection, and there was some kind of neighbor that always tried to grab me to study Torah with him, and I like the guy and I like the study, but nothing on the practical level. So the practice remained as it was before. So we kept kosher. My mother lit candles before Shabbat. Sometimes we used to go to the synagogue on Friday evening, but not on Saturday morning. And then around the age of 13, my bar mitzvah approached, so it was like a kind of a deadline that, I mean, I'm becoming an adult, I'm becoming more I'm fully committed to the halakha, so whether I take it seriously or not. So it was a kind of a philosophical decision on the level of a 13-year-old. So I started to think, is it true or not true? And then so there was the initial, the beginning of the process, and then a year later, around the age of 13.5, I had at the same time a charismatic teacher at school and a guide in the youth movement that I participated in, Bnei Akiva, and they both kind of swept me in. So I became very much convinced and committed, and I started more and more to fully observe and study more Torah, and then on 5th grade I started already to think about kind of high school yeshiva, religious boarding school. And finally I went there on the 6th grade, and once I got there I wanted to continue to a higher yeshiva, so I started to find ways for that, and the way I found was to skip the 11th grade and then move directly to the 12th grade and go to the yeshiva. And that's it. And then I spent 5.5 years in the yeshiva. That's my story.
By the way, you can ask questions anytime. In other words, you can interrupt each other. This is relaxed as if you're having a real discussion.
Yeah, I think it will take some time.
That's not enough of a story. I want to know, what really happened.
Okay, so I think it will take us some time to forget about the cameras.
Yeah, forget the cameras. And
were you challenged during your journey by secular people, by non-believers who would challenge your convictions?
Yes, I mean, I grew up in Tel Aviv, which is, even today, is a very secular city, but it was, I mean, the secularism was, I think, more aggressive when I grew up.
Yeah.
It was still a time that the religious people kept low profile. It was like kind of living in the diaspora. So I mean, the dominant how to say, atmosphere in the street was, secularism is modernity, secularism is the future, and there are some remains of the past, but they will soon disappear.
Yeah.
How to say, it was manifested sometimes in arrogant behavior from secular Jews to religious Jews. So sometimes mocking and sometimes even hitting people. So there were incidents.
And I don't know how to phrase it, but was there a political dimension of your journey that you saw your religious activism or being a religious person is a part of building your country?
Yes.
And
yes.
emphasizing its Jewish identity?
Yes, because eventually the way the stream I joined was what is called in America modern Orthodox, but in Israel it's called national religious.
Yes.
And it has a strong linkage with the understanding that the building of the state of Israel is part of the messianic process.
Yes.
And the more you develop the country, the more you help Messiah to come and manifest himself.
Yeah. And I mean, you ended your story by being a religious person, but being a religious is not an end of the story.
Right.
Did your journey as a religious person had many twisting during this journey?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and this was like a kind of one, one move that led me from being kind of half secular or maybe traditional person in a Jewish school, in a religious school, to the yeshiva.
Yeah.
And then once I got to the yeshiva, so there was the aspect in the yeshiva that I studied a lot. I mean, I think this period in the yeshiva shaped myself, my character, the way I approach things. It was really a shaping period for me. But of course, it immediately started criticism about the yeshiva, which in some cases, when I look back, it's funny, because I was so much worried about how they don't allow you to fully be who you are, and they kind of expect you to think in a similar way to everyone. But then I went to other places, so-called intellectual places like university, and I thought, oh wow, these pressures there were nothing. So, but there was criticism. There was there were other types of crises that are normal. I mean, if the life in the yeshiva are very intense. You get up at 6:30 and you pray, you eat, and then you're supposed to study all your time. Yeah. And I wasn't the one who was studying the most. I was very far from being the one studying most. Let's be more sincere about that. And still I was studying 12 or 13 hours a day. So of course, from time to time, and it's kind of part of the atmosphere that it's okay. From time to time, you have some kind of a small crisis. You go to the desert to walk and have some relaxation. Then you come back and you continue. And for me, it was also. I mean, there was also for me, there was a lot of hesitation about the fact that going to the yeshiva, I needed to postpone my army service, so who will defend the country instead of me? And So this was also another hesitation, and whether I'm studying enough to justify the fact that I'm not defending my country, and this was partially solved when I went for a very short period of 6 months of service. So okay, I was already part of the system. If they really needed me, they can call me. And then
I'll laugh from time to time, sorry.
okay. And then I tried different types. I went here, I went there. I was joining different, like the most, how do you say, avant-garde settlers places. They always supported the original few people who came there with the yeshiva. So I spent some months in Hebron, then I spent some months in Nablus. Especially in Nablus, it was a very special yeshiva because it was kind of a collection of people who were all like opposition, but different types of opposition, and we lived together. And it was very illuminating period. Then I came back to the yeshiva, and then finally I decided that I needed to leave the yeshiva, complete my army service. And then during the time of the army, I decided to go and study physics in the university. And during this period of time, I kind of became more detached from especially from studying Torah. So I continued to observe more or less. I think also the observance level went a little bit down. But I hardly studied anything during this time, from Torah or Talmud or things like that. And so there were, ups and downs and different ways, and I'm still in the process.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Me? Well, I grew up with my parents and my grandmother. And all of them are traditional Muslims in a very Egyptian sense, that everyone is observing Ramadan. Most people will pray most of the time.
Five times a day?
At least most of them, at least 4 of them. Mm-hmm. So I used to have this kind of natural learning of religion. It's not a decision that I will go to yeshiva or a specific religious school, but the environment itself was very religious, and especially my grandmother, she was very much in personal relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And I was, till now, I'm inspired with this kind of strong personal relationship. When she has a problem, she says, he will solve it, he solved it before, and he will solve it now, and she keeps praying and asking him, and the way she prays, she's like speaking to someone. It's not, she was illiterate, and she would speak with him very informally. Mm-hmm. And I was inspired by this kind of personal relationship with God. And I was imitating everyone, so I was praying, trying to memorize as much of the Quran as possible. When I get older, like 7 or 8 years, my father started to invest more time in teaching me about Islam, giving me books, and I also started to read some of his own books, which now when I look back to these books, I wonder how could I understand anything in these books when I was 8 years old. It's impossible for me to. But I remember that I finished all these books just reading them and feeling that I'm doing something good. Going to the mosque and having this kind of traditional relationship and traditional religiosity. My mother and also my father, they joined a kind of Sufi way. Mm. So, and I like the idea very much, how to have your own spiritual way with God, how to practice more of dhikr, of mentioning the holy names of God, how to fast even more than Ramadan, how to pray during the night when everyone is sleeping, and having this kind of not isolation that you will go to the desert and leave the people, but feeling of this kind of temporary psychological isolation when you build your very strong and very spiritual relationship with God. That's not based on education, it's based on experience. When I came to the high school, it was the years in Egypt of the Islamic activism. and Nasserism and Arab nationalism was failing after the defeat of 1967, and the country didn't know what kind of political identity we, the Egyptians, should have. And the answer was Islam. We left Islam, this is why we were defeated. It's a very simple and direct answer. When we were Muslims, we conquered the entire world. When we stopped being Muslims and decided to be Arabs and Egyptians and Pharaonic and all of these kind of things, we had this big defeat. The only answer we have is that we have to go back to Islam. And so I started to join some of Islamic movements when I was in high school, and I was very happy with turning my religion into social activism, into a movement. And that was a new thing for me, that when I speak about myself as a Muslim, it's not about praying. It's not about spiritual relationship with God. It's about building the country. It's about identity for Egypt. It's about solving the economic problems. These were very new things. When I get into college, I joined the Muslim Brotherhood group. And I made my career into the group very, very fast, to the leadership. And I like very much the idea that there is not only a movement, but an organization, that everything is very organized, well established. There are plans that you can feel relaxed. I mean, you can invest your time and your energy inside the group, and finally the group will bring in the final solution. It may take 100 years, you don't care, because you trust the group itself. You follow the orders, you keep working, you recruit more people. And I was successful and was inspired, and I felt that, okay, I'm a political activist, I'm a social activist in a very religious sense. Maybe right after I graduated, maybe a little bit after that, I started to question the agenda of the Muslim Brothers, and if at least I personally need to be a part of this group. And I discovered that more and more, I discovered that I need to be alone again. And the only good thing is that during this time I studied the Islamic legal system, and I read the hadith, and I finished memorizing the entire Quran. So I did many, many things, but the more I know, the less I feel I need to be a part of the Muslim Brothers, because I know enough now. Maybe I know more than most of the people, not all of them, but at least most of them. And it's not my source of knowledge, it's not my source of even of activism. They have different ideas, and I have to just to comply with them, and I didn't like it. So I decided to step back very gradually and decently, and I decided that if I have built a good and strong relationship with God, then why do I need a group to support this relationship? Because at that time the question was, if you leave the Muslim Brothers, you willing it or not, you will be less a good Muslim. You will not be as good Muslim as you are within the group, where everyone is a brother, where everyone is reminding you what you should be, how should you behave, etc. But they said, if I myself cannot have these feelings and have this action, then I don't need this group at all. It's up to me. And I decided to quit the group. And then I decided to be a scholar of sociology. You know that I graduated from School of Medicine. I became an orthopedist. Then I changed it. I became a psychiatrist and a neurologist. And then I decided to study anthropology and sociology in the American University in Cairo. And I found myself that, okay, this is what I need to do in the future. I'm a scholar. I'm a researcher. This is what I love the most. And I studied anthropology of Islam. And then my journey had like a new twist, like a new turn in questioning even the fundamentals of Islam itself. That not looking at Islam as something that's given and all I have to do is just to observe, but I have also to question. Not in any modern sense, because I don't like at all this modern sense of rupture, that this is a tradition, it's not going to work in the future. We are modern people. We have a new start. I don't like this idea. I believe in the tradition, but I believe that the tradition has been developing through years. And all what I need to do is not only to observe, but to keep renewing it and taking a humble one step forward. And that was a reconciliation between the modern sense of rupture and new beginning, this is modern Islam, and being very traditional. So that the tradition itself helps you to move forward. And in moving forward, you are moving forward in a dialogue with many, many great and genius scholars who lived in the past 1,400 years. And it's silly to say we don't need them, we have the Quran, we can have a new start. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And I started to see this position as a mix of arrogance and ignorance. Arrogance of how do you estimate yourselves that they can start anew, and ignorance of the tradition. I started to believe that most of the people who take this decision, they never attended the tradition. They didn't read the books. So why do we need it? We have the Quran, we have the Hadith, we can start anew. We can have something new. We must have something new. We can't keep observing what was in the past, but in relation and in dialogue with this tradition. And the more I go in this journey, I mean, it's not a phase that ended, and I can't tell you right now about the story of this journey, but right now I question the existence of God, and I'm not scared of it. I question the credibility of the Quran. I'm not scared of it. And I decided to open a space for the doubts, that the doubts are legitimate. Mm-hmm. And I need these doubts to make my faith positive. That in every second I take a positive decision that I want to be a Muslim. The only way to have this kind of positive faith is to have doubts. With no doubts, you relax, you sleep, I'm a Muslim, I'm very happy, that's it. And to protect this space of doubts, okay, I have doubts. And I keep visiting this space. I try to answer some of these questions and solve some of these doubts. Sometimes I succeed, most of the times I cannot. Sometimes after years I succeed in solving one of them, but the more you solve many of these doubts, the more you generate new doubts. And you keep them in these spaces. But for instance, the question of if Islam is for social justice, why is Prophet Muhammad, why the Quran didn't prohibit slavery? There are many answers that are already there. You can read them, but I don't believe in any one of them. They say that, okay, it was a social situation and we cannot have an abrupt change in any social system, and it had to be gradual, and Islam made every effort so that this kind of slavery will collapse finally by time. But no, the fact is that the Europeans, after the Enlightenment, it's because of modernity, it's because of secular people, and it's because of the human rights that slavery became prohibited once and for all. It's not because of any religions that now proclaim that no, it's because of our belief system and it's because of our morality and our principles that finally slavery ended up. This is a question that has no answer, and I recognize the legitimacy of these questions, that some parts of my tradition have some questions that I cannot answer. But
that's normal. I mean,
this is normal.
I mean, if a religion is divine,
yes,
then most probably there will be questions that you don't know the answers to.
Yes.
I mean, that's included in the definition, I think.
Yeah.
And I also don't. I mean, I would say that having this kind of discourse is a compromise in my way, in my way of understanding of at least of Judaism, because in the original Judaism there was. There were two levels of the Torah. There was the oral Torah and the written Torah. So the written Torah was given to Moses over a period of, I think, 2 years, that he got all the 5 books of Moses. And then there were added the prophets and so on. So the Bible was finalized like 2,500 years ago. And this was the written Torah. So the Bible was the only book that existed in the library.
Yes.
And there was a whole level of oral Torah, which is basically interpretations and oral traditions that were originally given to Moses in Sinai,
yes,
but were kept orally.
Yes.
And there's something about oral tradition, even if you memorize it and give it, teach your son, and you're trying to give the same words, but it adjusts itself to fit the new realities.
Yes.
And there's for me it's very illuminating on that sense that there's one of the Talmudic scholars, Rabbi Eliezer, who is there are in two different places. In one place they say about him that he never said anything he didn't hear from his rabbis.
Yes.
On the other hand, there was another place that notes an occasion where he said things that no ear have ever heard. And I think that's the mechanism of oral Torah, because the written Torah is not changing. You're not allowed to change not only one letter, but not even one, point on the letter.
Yes.
But how to translate that into practical terms in today's reality? It's the oral Torah, and
yes.
it teaches you. I mean, you of course try to remain loyal to the Torah, which
yes.
is what you need to do, and also what you need to do is to implement Torah in today's reality,
yes.
which you also do.
Yeah.
And I think in this way it kept adjusting. So then the oral Torah started to be written, but still I don't know if mentality is the right word, but the way people implemented it, of course, changed with the changing reality.
Yes.
And so this is one level. Another level is the fact that, of course, asking questions is maybe the most important part
yes.
of studying.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot get to new ideas if you are happy with your old ideas.
Yes.
And even if you go from one level to another, you cannot go to the upper level if you are happy with the lower level.
Yes.
And you will not leave the lower level if you don't ask questions.
Yes. And I think the tradition itself is full of questions and answers. The traditional way of writing religious books in the past used to be, at least in Islam, a kind of questions and answers.
Yes.
And when they are answering the question, they first bring other answers which you discover finally that the author would refute.
Yes.
But before exposing his answer, before presenting his answer, he first invites all the other answers. He presents the question, then he presents the answers, then he exposes the logic of each answer, then he starts to make a dialogue to refute all of them,
yes.
and then he presents his own answer. And this kind of learning makes you feel that it's a kind of dialogue, it's a kind of discussion.
Yes.
It's not like strict instructions that you have to follow
yes.
them and that's it.
And he also shares with you it's also like that in Judaism. So the author shares with you not only his final
yes.
conclusion, but
yes.
also the process of his thinking, so you yes. can see his reasoning and the yes. way he approaches things and the way he deconstructs things, yes. so you can accept or not accept.
Yes. My sheikh used to tell me that, one of my sheikhs used to tell me that it is prohibited for the mujtahid, that is the jurist who will make new fatwas, it is prohibited for him to follow inch by inch his teacher. Because if he does that and he gives the same answers his teacher would give, that means he doesn't work his mind. He doesn't use it. And it is prohibited not to use your mind, or otherwise why you are mujtahid. And he said it is a must for every mujtahid to make a difference than his teacher, to take situations that would not be taken by his teacher.
Uh-huh.
It's one of your duties.
No, I don't recall anything like that in Judaism, but I like it.
I like it too. That's a good statement. Do you want to go to another question?
Yes, please.
I think that was a very interesting exchange with respect to your backgrounds, and it takes us to another question, so I'll go look it up right now. This will all be cut.
Okay.
I mean, this portion. Would you mind discussing this question? Is there something fundamentally wrong with the world and humanity? What remedy, if you believe that's the case, what remedy does your religion prescribe? So talk about that. Is there something fundamentally wrong with humanity or with the world? And what's the prescription, you doctors of religion, for the malady?
So you start.
I start this time.
Yeah.
Okay, I will make a statement and you can cut it off. Okay, you can edit this part if you think it's very offensive. I think this question is very Christian. It's a very Christian question about that the humanity is sinful. And the humans are sinful.
Yeah.
It's the nature of humans that they are sinful. And this is not the way I would think of Islam. My understanding of Islam is that problems like wars, like conflicts, are a part of the nature of reality. It doesn't mean they are good. It doesn't mean they are desired, but they are expected. They are expected to happen. They are a part of this world, the nature of this world. And Islam doesn't promise that being a Muslim, that these problems will be solved. But it promises you that you can be a part of the solution. When this solution will come, it will never come. Because this is the nature of the world. There will be a continuous struggle. Your role is to be on the right side, participating in this struggle, fighting evil, siding with the good thing, knowing that you will finally die. A new generation will come, new people will come, till the end of the world. And then, and this is the only way that we will be accounted for God, not for the results, not for bringing any remedy to the world, but by struggling for the right cause.
But don't you have a messianic concept, like the Mahdi or?
But this is the end of the world. There will be no world.
Then the world will finish.
The world is finished.
Go back to God.
Yes. And by the way, this is why when some Muslims say that we have to fight the Jews because we have a prophecy that we will fight them at the end of the world, I say that this statement is the most peaceful statement ever, because that means as long as there is a world, we have no war with Jews. We are only at the end of the world when this world will finish that we will fight them.
Because in the way I see, I mean, I agree with you in the sense that it's not so much the fact. I mean, it's. I wouldn't put it like this, that the world is wrong.
Yes.
But the world has a journey to go through.
Yes.
The world first by the mere creation is already far away from God, and then by the sin of Adam and Eve became even further away from God, and now it has a journey to go back to God.
Yes.
And the Torah is the guidance of how to do that. Yes. And this is why the halakha, which is the Jewish religious law, is derived from the root halach, which is to walk.
Yes.
So it's the way for the Jew, first of all.
Yes.
Judaism is first of all for Jews to go through the existing world and make it come closer to God.
Yes.
First, the person himself, but also everything that the person deals with.
Yes.
And yeah.
No, in Islam it's different. I mean, the story of Eve and Adam, that when God decided to create Eve and Adam, the angels objected and they said
Yes. Right.
that why do you create people who will corrupt the earth
Yes.
and shed blood?
Yes.
So it was expected from them that this is what they are going to do. And he said that I know what you don't know. And it was the intention of God to create those people who will, yes, they will corrupt, they will shed blood, it is expected, and they will do good things as well.
Yeah, but the role, I mean, the journey is like walking on how do you say, on a rope.
Yes.
So you have to balance the
Yes.
two sides. So you have things that attract you to be more spiritual, things that attract you to be more physical, and you have to balance
Yes.
the two and walk through.
Yes.
And one of the Hasidic teachers says, and the trick is not to be afraid and to go forward. But this is the thing. I mean, you have to learn. First you have to struggle with yourself to do good and not do evil, because you are attracted to both. And then you have to work with the world in a way that will make the world itself more divine,
Yes.
closer to God.
Yeah.
And then when Messiah will come, there are two ways for Messiah to come. One is that the humankind made such good work
Yes.
that already it's so, the world is so spiritual, so Messiah will come, or that there will be an end for this journey. Whatever you achieved, and then Messiah will come and help you with the last bit.
Yes.
And then the world will change, and there will be the whole existence will be different on a more spiritual level. Probably we'll continue to have struggles and continue to evolve, but there is this constant way of improving.
From the little I read about Judaism is that ancient Judaism has this idea of involving nature and the world within the religion itself, that for the world to get divine and to get established, Israel had to observe the halakha. And there must be the temple, and the priests should be very pure. And I mean, it's kind of circles of this, but there is a kind of disengagement of the word from religion in Islam. The way I understand Islam, it's like the word is very neutral. It's just a stage for actions made by man, but it's not like nature is divine. By man intervention, there's something that's ruptured and need to be healed again by pure water that's coming from natural resources and all of these kind of ideas. You don't find something like this in Islam. The world is just a stage, very neutral, very secular stage, very natural, very physical. And I mean, this engagement of the world from this whole story about being religious or being holy or being pure. And men are just human beings who need to do the good thing from a very legal perspective. And I mean, I find Islam match the legal understanding of Judaism, that where most of the emphasis is on legality and less on this kind of the nature and ritual thing and the cultic understanding. And when you were speaking, I remember two things. That there are two schools in the Islamic legal thought. One of them that says that the question is there something right and something wrong about the fatwas we are giving to the people? There are two answers. One answer is that yes, of course there is that right answer, and the other answers are wrong. And this school would say that okay, it's impossible to know the right answer because we have 100 scholars who will give probably something between 50 and 200 different opinions because they will change their opinions in the future. It's impossible to know that right answer. Especially that God will not reveal himself again, send Gabriel again, and Muhammad will come again to tell us the right answer. So they said, okay, the one who brings the right answer will be double rewarded. Everyone who will bring a wrong answer, as long as his intention was good, his methodology was good enough, he will be rewarded also. Yes. The other school, which I belong to and I like very much, they said there is no such thing as the right answer. And that the intention of God itself doesn't matter at all. And we are not even asked or required to know what was the intention of God so that we know the right answer. And for those people, as-sawab yata'addad, that the right answer is plural. There are many rights. And you just need to have one of them because what God requires from you is obedience. It's trying to read the text, trying honestly to say that, okay, this is what's meant by this piece of text. I think so. And you do something, that's it. But not to get obsessed with what was the right answer.
Yeah, in Judaism I think it's similar from that perspective because you have to be sincere and work hard to really understand the text, and then your understanding is the right answer for you.
Yeah.
And if you record all the right answers, some of them will contradict each other, and still there were the two famous schools in the Mishnah, Hillel school and Shabai school, yes, were contradicting each other on nearly everything they said.
Yes.
And they say, the Talmud says that the voice came from heaven saying that both are the living saying of God.
Yes.
So both are divine, which means both are true, even though they contradict each other.
Yes.
Which means that the law of contradiction does not apply to the divine reality. I think also not to the human reality.
Yes. Yes.
People are very easy contradicting themselves.
Yes. And I believe that because of this, because there is no one right answer, we cannot speak about a remedy of the world. Because then you need one remedy of the world, one healing of the world, the right path. And it's It's almost impossible to find something like this, that this is the truth. You can't find something like this in Islam. So you keep trying with good intentions, with the right methodology.
But you know, I think you can say that, for example, from the Jewish perspective, that Torah is the remedy for the spiritual problems of the world,
Yes.
And the social problems and the economic problems. But Torah itself is not one thing, one ideas of one person. It's an approach.
Yes.
It's a basic text and a variety of approaches.
Yes.
That are not, I mean, they are not random. They
Yes.
are not, you
Yes.
cannot say anything you
Yes.
want
Yes.
and say the Torah says that.
Yes.
There are very clear boundaries to what is Torah and what is outside Torah. But the boundaries are not very narrow. They
Yes.
are quite wide.
Yes, this is, I mean, you phrased it very well. This is exactly what I wanted to say by methodology, that there is a methodology that was developed in the Islamic scholarship, and you have to follow this methodology. This methodology is not strict, it's not very strict. It doesn't mean that you will have only one or two or three answers. You can have many, but not infinite answers.
Yes.
Not some unexpected crazy answers. There are many enough, in my opinion at least.
Yes, and you know, one of the midrashic saying about the Torah, it says that there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. I didn't count, but I believe it. But the idea is not so much, you know, the number of the letters,
Yes.
but also that in the two times that the Israelites were counted on the way between Egypt and the land of Israel, in both times there was 600,000 people. So that means that, you know, every person has
Yes.
his or her letter in the Torah, which means his own or her own specific way within the wide
Yes.
way of the halakha.
Yes.
And it was very common that someone will pick a specific commandment, that this will be his focus, and he will put most of his attention on this. So it doesn't mean that, of course, he performed all other things,
Yes.
but you have to put your attention somewhere. So
Yes.
this was his attention, and someone else picked another thing.
Gentlemen, let me ask in this vein, within your religious traditions, is there room for authority to speak with respect to the right answer? You've both spoken about the text
Yes.
being the answer to the problems of the world, and that there are, within limits,
Yes.
multiple responses to that text that might be right. But in your traditions today, are there certain interpreters, prophets after Muhammad, who aren't really prophets but have still an authority seen by the people in Islam or within Judaism, that can speak more authoritatively as to what the right answer might be at a particular time and place? In other words, I'm asking the question of religious authority. If you're doing a comparative religion here, you'd go to a particular guru among the Hindu.
Yes.
You'd go to the Pope
Yes.
among the Roman Catholics. Is there a voice of authority that can give the most correct
Yes.
interpretation at a particular time in either of your communities?
So I think there will be two levels to this question. One is the fact that there is, I mean, the Talmudic discussions, and sometimes in the Talmud itself, were not kept open.
Yes.
There was a clear bottom line for any discussion,
Yes.
and there are books of the Shulchan Aruch, the Halakha, that tells you what to do. So if you are not a big scholar yourself, you open the book, you know what you need to do, and this is the default guidance for every person. If you are a big scholar and you study the issue yourself, and you study all the reasoning of all the scholars, and you reach to a conclusion that you are convinced by someone else who was not decided to have the halakha go along his ideas, you can still adopt his ideas.
Yes.
Because you studied the thing in depth and you are convinced by his idea, that's fine.
Yes.
So that's one level. So there is a one way that people need to follow. And of course, this one way had some changes because people lived in different places. So maybe the people in I don't know, in Poland decided one way that is one, and then the people in Yemen maybe decided some other thing. But with these variations, there's one way. On top of that, you are supposed to have a rabbi whom you will ask questions when you have doubts. I mean, there's a new reality that is not reflected in the books because it did not exist. For example, someone invented electricity, so now there's an electric bulb, and you need to know whether you can use it, light it on or off on Shabbat or not. So okay, so there are the leading scholars who will do the reasoning. Probably your rabbi will not be one of them,
yes.
but he will have also a rabbi, and
yes.
and you know there will be some kind of hierarchy of rabbis, and you will get the answer, which will be the authoritative for you. But it might be there will be, usually there are more than one rabbi in this top level.
Yes.
So each of them will have people who follow him, and in some cases it will be there will be differences between people.
Yes. Well, the question of authority in Islam is, the answer of this question is very ambiguous, because the one thing that I like in Islam the most is the lack of a certain body that can claim any authority on Islam, that say, I speak in the name of Islam. And the one thing that sometimes scares me the most is the same point.
Mm-hmm.
That's the lack of this point, because sometimes you need someone to speak in the name of Islam, and that this someone, he or she, will be authoritarian enough so that people will follow this person. And when you find someone, because someone like Bin Laden, when people say that Bin Laden doesn't have the right to interpret the Quran and that jihad had so many meanings, okay, if he doesn't have this right, why do you have it? And you have also the right to say who can have this right and who cannot have this right. I mean, if we share this right, then he certainly has this right too. And the answer, in my understanding of Islam, the answer comes from two sources. One of them is that the methodology is that, okay, how did you bring this idea that it is a good thing to do to kill 3 or 4 or 5,000 Americans in one day? So there must be a methodology. What is this methodology? So he must bring a text. He must bring some other fatwas. He must relate them. I mean, the reasoning, there must be some reasoning that then you can criticize and you can critique. He doesn't say that, hey, the last night I was sleeping and I had a vision and I saw Muhammad and he told me to kill 5,000 persons, so that's it. I'm speaking on behalf of God. God spoke to me today morning, and he told me, go Osama and kill 5,000 persons, and this is why I'm doing it. Something like this is impossible in Islam. There must be a methodology, rational one, that you can critique. Second, authority is popular, which again is a very good thing, and it also scares you, because any populist person, someone who likes to have a big following of people, can claim this authority. But again, if the people don't follow you and the people don't trust you, automatically you have no authority. And there was a question to a medieval scholar that who can have the right to give fatwas? And the answer was amazing. He said, anyone who sits in the mosque and gives fatwa. The first reading of the answer scares you. That means anyone can give fatwa? Yes, but who will ask him? It's the people. No one will come to him. I mean, if he tells someone you can get married with 200 women, no one will come to him again. So it's that the community and the society has the authority, and this authority is very diffused. It's not in concrete. It's not in one body, in one mosque, in one sheikh. So this is my first answer. My second answer is that sociologically speaking, Muslims find different ways to organize the question of authority. So if you look to Egypt right now, we know that the Mufti of Egypt and the Sheikh al-Azhar are authoritarian people. It doesn't mean if he says, for instance, that in ablution you should not wash your hand from here to there. No, you should do it the other way. So every Egyptian Muslim must follow him. No, of course not. But still, When Sheikh Al-Azhar says something, it has great weight. It has meaning, it has a value. It's not like if I say something, I have the right to say many things. Many people had the right to say many things during the history of Islam. Many people like Ibn Taymiyyah, for instance, when he made his fatwas, during the life of Ibn Taymiyyah, who was considered shaz, that's apparent, that's non-accepted by anyone. 100 years after his death, everyone would come and read his fatwas and believe in them. So I still like to protect the rights of people whom we think as on the fringe, as eccentric. Okay, they have the right at least to write whatever they believe in. As long as it didn't turn out to be a big movement that's very dangerous, then this is a political question. It's not about Islam, it is a political question.
Yeah, I would say that it's quite similar in Judaism. I mean, we have, there's no authority in the sense that someone will think instead of you,
yes,
if you don't want it.
Yes.
But if, as I said before, I think, if you say, okay, I don't have the time to study the thing in depth, please tell me,
yes,
what you studied, then he will tell you.
Yes.
And there is the guidance that you have to have the same rabbi all the time. Okay, you can switch from time to time, but you don't switch according to the answers.
Yes.
You switch according to the personality.
Yes.
And then you have to follow this rabbi, whatever he says, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
But you can always have the freedom to study in depth things yourself and not
yes,
ask your rabbi.
Yes. And also the question, it's there is a difference between the religious authority and the political authority. And the political leader of the community, of the society, because there are many ideas, he has the right to pick one of them. Maybe he doesn't have the right to create one of them, but he has the right, yes, to choose one of them and say, hey, this answer fits well in our society. I'm taking this one. And by his political, not by his religious, by his political authority, he can impose this opinion on the rest of the society. And I met someone, he's a Tunisian friend, and he said that we can end polygamy for once and still be Islamic. And I said, how? He said, isn't it one of the opinions that the woman can put a condition in the marriage contract that you don't have the right to have another wife? I said, yes, if she puts this condition, you must observe it. He said, okay, I'm the political leader. I will make it in every contract, in every marriage contract, this condition, yeah, and the government will observe all the people that they must respect their contracts. And, yeah, and technically speaking, he's right.
Right.
That's very clever of him, and also I'd like to follow up on the question that many people have with respect to political and religious authority, both within Judaism and within Islam. In the Hebrew Bible, as well as in the Quran and the history, there are times where the religious authority was separate from the political authority. But one could say during the time of Moses, they were identical, that Moses had both political and religious authority among the people. The same you could say at the time of Muhammad.
Yes.
What religious reasons do you give today for separating church from state, as they say in America, or keeping them together? How would you respond to an American audience, yes, when they say, oh, these old religions don't get it. They think you can't separate church and state. But clearly, we do it here, and we're still religious. You see, well, respond to that question in your own way, whatever you'd like to say. You could either talk about your home politics or American politics, but I'd really like to get the religious flavor of your view of the separation or not of religious and political authority from the standpoint of your religious tradition.
You want me to start? Okay. I have a professor. His name is Abdullah Naim.
Put that up a little higher. Yeah, just take a moment and take it up. I noticed that, yeah, to the next level even. There you go. That's good.
It's okay.
That's better. Go ahead. You said you had a professor.
Yeah, I have a professor in Emory University. His name is Abdullah Naim.